George's Secret Key to the Universe, Chapter 3. If George had thought the kitchen was untidy, then this next room was in a whole different dimension of messiness. It was filled with piles and piles of books stacked up so high that some of the wobbly towers reached almost to the ceiling. As Freddie charged right through the middle of the room, notebooks, paperbacks, leather-bound tomes, and bits of paper flew up in a tornado around him. "Catch him!" shouted Eric, who was trying to drive the pig back toward the kitchen. "I'm trying!" George shouted back as he was batted in the face by a shiny jacketed book. "Hurry!" said Eric. "We must get him out of here." With a great leap, Annie's dad hurled himself right into Freddie's back and grabbed his ears. Using them as a sort of steering wheel, he turned the pig, who was still moving at quite some speed, and rode him like a bucking bronco through the door and back into the kitchen. Left alone, George looked around in wonder. He had never been in a room like this before. Not only was it beautifully, gloriously messy as all the papers flying about in the air came gently down to the ground, but it was also full of exciting objects. On the wall, a huge blackboard covered with symbols and squiggles and colored chalk caught his eye. It also had lots of writing on it, but George didn't stop to read it. There were too many other things to look at. In the corner, a grandfather clock ticked slowly, the noise of the swinging pendulum clicking in time with a row of silvery balls suspended on very fine wire that seemed to be in perpetual motion. On a wooden stand was a long brass tube that pointed up toward the window. It looked old and beautiful, and George couldn't resist touching the metal, which felt cool and soft at the same time. Eric walked back into the room with his shirt untucked, his hair standing on end, his glasses at a strange angle, and a huge smile on his face. In his hand, he held a book, which he had caught while riding Freddie out of the room. "George, this is incredible!" Eric looked thrilled. "I thought I'd lost it. It's my new book. I couldn't find it anywhere. And now your pig has found it for me. What a result!" George just stood there, hand on the metal tube, staring at Eric open-mouthed. He'd been expecting to get into trouble for the damage his pig had wreaked, but Eric didn't even seem angry. He wasn't like anyone George had ever met. He never seemed to get angry, no matter what happened in his house. It was all very baffling. "So I must thank you for all your help today," continued the peculiar Eric, putting the lost book on top of a cardboard box. "Help?" echoed George faintly, who couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. "Yes, help," said Eric firmly. "As you seem so interested in science, perhaps I could tell you a bit more about it, by way of a thank you? Where shall we start? What would you like to know?" George's mind was so full of questions that he found it hard to pick just one. Instead, he pointed at the metal tube. "What's this?" he asked. "Good choice, George. Good choice," said Eric happily. "That's my telescope. It's a very old one. 400 years ago, it belonged to a man called Galileo. He lived in Italy, and he loved looking up at the sky at night. At that time, people believed that all the planets in our solar system went around the Earth. Even the sun, they thought, orbited our planet. But I know that's not true," said George, putting his eye to the old telescope. "I know that the Earth goes around the sun." "You do now," said Eric. "Science is also about gaining knowledge through experience. You know that fact because Galileo discovered it all those years ago. By looking through his telescope, he realized that the Earth and all the other planets in the solar system orbit the sun. Can you see anything?" "I can see the moon," said George, squinting up the telescope, which was angled up to look out of the living room window into the evening sky. "It looks like it's smiling." "Those are scars from a violent past, the impacts of meteorites that crashed on the surface," said Eric. "You can't see very far with Galileo's telescope. But if you went to an observatory and looked through a really big telescope, you would be able to see stars billions and billions of miles away. Stars so far away that by the time their light reaches our planet, they may actually already be dead. Can a star die? Really? Asked George. Oh, yes, said Eric. But first, I want to show you how a star is born, and then we'll take a look at how it dies. Hang on a minute, George, while I get everything set up. I think you're going to like this. Return to page 33. Our moon. A moon is a natural satellite of a planet. A satellite is an object that goes around a planet like the Earth, which goes around the sun, and natural means that it is not man-made. The average distance from the Earth, 238,854 miles, or 384,399 kilometers. Diameter, 2,160 miles, or 3,476 kilometers, which is 27.3% of Earth's diameter. Surface area is 74 thousandths times Earth's surface area. The volume is 20 thousandths times Earth's volume. The mass is 123 hundred thousandths times Earth's mass. Gravity at the equator, 16.54% of Earth's surface at Earth's equator. The moon circles around the Earth in 27.3 days. The way the moon shines in the night sky is the same every 29.5 days. The most obvious effect the moon's gravity has on Earth is the tides of the oceans. The sea on the side of the Earth facing the moon is pulled harder towards the moon because it is closer. This raises a bulge in the sea on that side. Similarly, the sea on the side away from the moon is pulled towards the moon less than the Earth because it is further away. This creates another bulge in the sea on the other side of the Earth. Even though the sun's gravitational pull is much stronger than the moon's, it has only about half the moon's effect on the tides because it is so much further away. When the moon is roughly in line with the Earth and the sun, the moon and the sun tides combine to produce the large tides, called spring tides, twice a month. There is no atmosphere on the moon, so the sky there is black, even during the day. And there hasn't been an earthquake or a volcanic eruption there since the time life began on Earth. So all living organisms that have ever been on the Earth have seen exactly the same features on the moon. From Earth, we always see the same side of the moon. The first pictures of the moon's hidden side were taken by a spacecraft in 1959. Page 34, Light and Stars. Everything in our universe takes time to travel, even light. In space, light always travels at the maximum speed that is possible, 186,000 miles per second, 300,000 kilometers per second. This speed is called the speed of light. It takes light only about 1.3 seconds to travel from Earth to the moon. Our sun is further away from us than our moon is. When light leaves the sun, it takes about 8 minutes and 30 seconds to reach us on Earth. The other stars in the sky are much, much further away from Earth than the sun. The closest one after the sun is called Proxima Centauri, and it takes 4.22 years for light from it to reach Earth. All other stars are even further away. The light of almost all the stars we can see in the night sky has been traveling for hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years before reaching our eyes. Even though we see them, some of these stars may not exist anymore, but we do not know it yet because the light of their explosion when they die has yet to reach them, has yet to reach us. Distances in space can be measured in terms of light years, which is the distance light travels in 1 year. A light year is almost 6,000 billion miles around, or around 9,500 billion kilometers. Also, if you look at the picture on the bottom right of page 34, they're demonstrating to you the Proxima Centauri, the closest star to the Earth after our Sun.